I hereby convene this meeting of the Planning and Public Policy Committee of the Board of Directors of the Lower Colorado River Authority. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. The time is 10:08. Yeah, quorum is present. The General Counsel will record each committee member who is in attendance. If you'd like to speak during the public comment, please sign at the entrance of the meeting room. I don't think we have anybody today, so we'll move right ahead. The next item is approve the minutes from our last meeting. Is there a motion to approve? So move. Director Crane. Any further questions, discussion? All in favor say aye. 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 Motion passes. Okay, our next item is the fiber broadband business plan update. And I believe we're going to need to convene in an executive session. Is that correct?
We'll start an open session and then we'll have a pause and we'll go into executive session for critical infrastructure.
Okay.
Great. Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to update just where we are with our fiber broadband business plan. We had had this update about a year ago, and we just kind of wanted to come back to the board and just talk about where we are a year later. There's a couple of things I want to hit in terms of we'll have a high-level summary, just talk about how we got here through the legislation and sort of where we are in terms of the business model and what the dollars are around that. So starting with an executive summary of where we are. Right now, we receive about just a little over $1 million a year in revenue from our fiber business. And that comes from 27 total customers using about 144 circuits or connections that are coming into our system. The biggest one you see there is obviously Pedernales, and then we also have a bunch of others. One of the items that we've been talking about and working on over the last 2.5 years is in order to provide this service to third parties, we've had to cure some easements on our system. And so we have been working through that process in the last 2.5 years, and we're about 98% complete. And we'll see some maps that show exactly kind of where that is and what remains. But out of those, we have cured 703 parcels. We've been keeping the real estate folks, Mark and his team, very busy working on this, and you all have seen those if they've come through over the past 2.5 years. And there's about 14 parcels that are remaining on the initial set that we really wanted to have clear. So a lot of good progress that we've seen in the last 2.5 years. I want to talk a little bit also, there's been significant state and federal grants dollars that have been made available, and we're seeing a lot more of that coming in, and I'm going to have a little bit more detail on this in another couple of slides, but we're really excited about the BOOT 2 funding. BOOT is Bring Online Opportunities to Texas. They've had a couple of rounds of funding. There's $729 million in the current round of funding that's targeted for 24 different counties to be able to expand broadband access. There's also a little over $3 billion in federal funds that are being deployed for last mile. We'll talk about what that means here in a second when we look at the model. And there's an additional $1 billion from the Texas Broadband Development Office to supplement those federal dollars. All of this geared towards providing broadband service to either zero-served or just underserved communities throughout Texas. A little history reminder, just back in 2021, the legislature passed Senate Bill 632 that really authorized LCRA to provide middle mile service to customers. And so what does that really look like in terms of the business model? There we are in the middle of this little chart. Last mile providers, these would be our customers. These are internet service providers, whether they be wireless or wired. They could be data centers. They could be wind farms, solar farms, those type of generation assets, or other utilities like PEC, Bluebonnet, our customers. They provide that last mile service to customers, to homes, to those entities, but then they connect to us. We are the middle mile that then transmits that information, that data, from that customer out off to the internet in the backbone, essentially, and that's what you see on the far right. San Antonio and Austin and Houston, that's the backbone where we connect into. So we provide that middle service that's right there in the center of the chart. As I had mentioned, there's a lot of investments that we've been doing over the past year, the biggest of which is easement curing, somewhere in the neighborhood of just over $7 million in that area to be able to provide access to the third parties throughout our service territory. that does provide, we've also been looking at the access points for when people come into our system would be outside of our substations, and we provide networking gear and cybersecurity services for when they do. We want it to be a protected and secure system. So why are we here, or why should people choose LCRA? It's because it's available. We have around 2,500 miles of fiber service in our service territory. It's high speed. We have over 200 terabits of connection capacity. Because it's our system for LCRA, it's one that we use for our transmission system as well as our own corporate system. We're monitoring it 24/7, 365 days a year. That system has to be up and running for us first and foremost, and for the services we're providing our customers. So then those utilities and those entities, they like that as well, that we can provide that kind of reliability. As mentioned, our system, or as it states there, our system's up 99.99% of the time. It is very reliable.
Steve, you had mentioned data centers, and of course that's been the big conversation in many regards around this organization. What is the potential for data centers in our fiber network?
So from a fiber standpoint, they're going to probably put in their own cabling, their own fiber, because of the massive quantity of what they need. But our biggest business with them is going to be their own corporate network, to be able to provide the computers that are there, the people that are there, their HVAC systems, monitoring systems that they have within there. But the actual AI computing, they're going to most likely be providing their own cables for that. We might provide some backup, but it's a massive amount. What were you saying? How big were those conduits they were putting in?
There is the latest data center going in today. They're putting in 9 6-inch conduits, and they're putting in 4 288 count fibers in each of those 9 conduits. So it'll be a couple of thousand fibers going in and out of the data centers.
Wow.
That's the capacity that they're looking for.
Obviously a different league than where we are.
Yeah, I would just add that we're trying to do this where if there is no other option for them, they would use us for part of this. I think we're trying to stay where we're best situated. And if we need to provide something because there's not another opportunity at the private sector, we would look at that. But we've got things that would be peripheral in communities and in other business environments. So it really is something we can look at, but it's probably trying to focus on being complementary to some other entity that may be providing that. Kind of keeps us over our lane and not get us crossways with anybody.
Well, we could possibly be a redundant service for them.
I think that's probably where we're looking at. And, Steve used the word, Jason, is backstop. So if something happens in their network, we're there for just in case, but it's not we're not the primary, and we're also not marketing that as a primary.
Yep.
So Phil, I know absolutely nothing about this industry. What's our competition in this industry?
Well, in the broadband side, it's more, do you want to be against the AT&Ts and the Spectrum, Time Warners, et cetera? They've got service. So we're trying to follow, if you, Steve's other slide, can we go back? One more.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So that middle mile, then we carry on the transmission side of the house and how we do that. That's our unique value proposition. And so if somebody wants to hook up to us on that, whether they're that last part, that last mile provider, we can help anybody do that in the world. And I think in the middle mile part, we have a great position, and we're providing a very valuable service that was in the prior slide to that, as Steve told the story on. There's all these federal and state dollars that are trying to get to rural Texas, that are trying to get to underserved areas, that an internet service provider or another entity like a county or a city says, a school district, we want to have high-speed broadband in our community. And the larger entities haven't showed up and done that, or they don't have scale, or they don't have the speed we do. Our speed's extraordinary. And Jason, you've done a great job to have that both reliable, affordable, and fast. Kind of your 3 check the boxes around that. And then they can set themselves up to be that provider. It's kind of the question that Chairman was asking, though. If there's another entity that's providing that service for the data center on the face-to-face side, then we're able to maybe help that entity out as opposed to us being the direct conduit for that. We really are that middle mile. Kind of an analogy being, much like a transmission side of the house, we don't do distribution. We don't hook up to retail people. In this case, we're kind of like the highway. We don't do the roads. So we go down the highway, you're carrying all the stuff, but when you get off your exit, that's gonna be up to somebody else to take care of those roads. That's not the state highway system, that's gonna be the city or the county, kind of use that analogy through that. And so as long as we're that middle mile, we're good. And we really don't have a lot of competition per se for this part, except you have other new technologies like the Starlink satellite dish. You know, you got people like that, you've got new technologies coming to play for that, but that's also a different price point for different reasons. So you've got different segments, which are all trying to get the same thing of how do you provide high-speed connectivity for the ability to run your business, do your data, transfer things around that. And that's where the data centers come in because they need the ability to move what they're trying to do as well on their own network as well. Jason, I missed anything in that you want to add?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Back on one of the previous slides, that $3.3 billion in federal funds, is that for just the state of Texas, or is that the entire United States?
That's just the state of Texas.
Just in Texas?
Yes, sir.
It's gonna help.
Yeah, and I think we were doing this before they did that. Sometimes you're lucky rather than good. And I think our network investment on that, we hope others can go apply for those monies. That's not our stuff per se, but as they do their application, they can then use our network. What they're trying to hook up is that last mile part. Is that a fair way to characterize that?
Those dollars for that, to build up that last mile.
So the last mile, you need the distribution network, back to the electricity thing, where a community needs to be able to hook up stuff. So if you're in you're in Kerrville, and say you didn't have what you want speed-wise, an internet service provider or another entity can come in and say, we're going to do all these things, and we can connect on the LCRA transmission system to get that middle mile to hook us up for speed. And that creates the infrastructure pool of dollars to invest in that.
It'll facilitate a lot more customers for us.
And that's the goal. I mean, you think about it, and the reason, Steve, and we're all doing this is, we get historical on this, and y'all have supported this. When we were created, 90 years ago, electricity was the thing that changed everything for people. It's how you were able to have economic development and job creation and healthcare. You kept the lights on, you kept people safe and secure. In 2024, if you don't have high-speed connectivity, you're being left behind in the economy today. In a state of 30-plus million people, if you've got 2, 3, or 4 million people that can't be connected, they're not going to have the chance for education and growth and opportunities. So this is our part of that solution. And if you want to work in a small town, you want to work in undersized area, if you don't have this ability to do it, you can't be part of the economy in 2024. You can't sell pecans all over the world like you want to. So it's part of how you do your thing, and I think this allows us to continue what's in our DNA to help connect people, whether it's through power and or broadband. And then the stuff we're working on telecom as well for public safety. I'm sorry, keep going.
Nope, that's good. All good points. And to feed into that, there are 5 prospective customer groups that we're really looking at. These are very similar. It's internet service providers. So a lot of these dollars that we're talking about, it would be for an internet service provider to come in and build that distribution network. And that could be either wireless, where they send a wireless signal to our middle mile service where they connect in, or they could actually drop in wires, hardwire it. So either one of those are possible. Also, data centers. So we've included it in there because, like we just talked through all of that. They're going to need a lot of information provided to run their corporate networks, their systems that are there that are above and beyond sort of the AI computing that they're doing in-house. We already have several utilities, co-ops, munis that are part of the system, and that'll continue to grow as that access is built out and about for them. And then a lot of the solar and wind farms are wanting to have communications and be able to monitor and even run their system. And so this provides that service to them as well. So a little bit more about the grants. The first round of boot grants, Boot 1 program was earlier this year. That was really for mostly in rural West Texas, and it was to build really sort of what we are, somewhat of a middle mile. It was just to build a long haul middle mile fiber to be able to connect Dallas and El Paso. And then people might be able to connect onto that. But it was really bolstering the internet connection that exists out in El Paso. So that helps establish some of it. The next round that we're really talking about, that we're excited about, is Boot 2. Those applications were submitted in August 26th. We are a part of 2 of those. We're not committed to anything in terms of the grant. It's just we would be the middle mile service for both applications that were submitted by the counties of Bastrop and Caldwell. So in the proposals that they're putting together, where they would be that distribution set for the counties, they would use our middle mile service as part of the application that they submitted. So we're really excited that that could be a potential in dollars that we could see.
Steve, who's the decision maker on these grants, Big Two grants?
It's the broadband office, the state broadband
Is
office.
it,
Yes,
is
sir.
it the state of
It's in the-
Texas or is it a federal?
State of Texas.
It's in the comptroller's office,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and they've been assigned that responsibility, and they have a committee that's embedded in that. The governor's appointees, I believe, do that within the comptroller's office. Is that correct? Right.
And continuing with that, the Texas Broadband Development Office, they also have some technical assistance programs that they're awarding. 32 counties were sharing $6 million for some of their planning. There's also some rural hospital broadband programs. So as these people are going, these customers, these are all potential customers that we could have as they're going through their process of putting this together, could connect to our middle mile services. And then last, there's another 2 smaller programs looking at pole replacements. So again, for distribution systems that exist already, being able to replace poles with stronger, more resilient poles with the cabling that they would have. And there's also, they're looking at some next-gen 911 services. So for 911 services, again, all of that are potential opportunities that could connect into our middle mile system. And there's some upcoming stuff that we're looking at from NTIAA. Texas will order another $3 billion of last mile providers through the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. And the Texas Broadband Development Office, again, that's that $1 billion that they're going to match with that. So the bottom line is there is a lot of funding just for Texas that's sitting out there to build and develop that distribution system, as we've sort of alluded to it, to connect to what we have in terms of middle mile. That's it for the public or open session. Eric Anderson and his team are out there talking to folks. We had a meeting yesterday, actually, with some folks down in San Antonio, and we're continuing to go out and meet with the counties, with our co-ops, with municipalities to talk about what we have available, not just in broadband, but also for the private LTE system that we have. So there's a lot of work going on and a lot of potential coming up here in the next couple of years.
And so at this point, we're going to move into executive session. So please, Director Cooper, would you read us in?
Sure. Committee will now go into executive session pursuant to sections 551.071, 551.074, 551.076, 551.086, 551.089, and 418.183F of the Texas Government Code. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, 2024, and the time is 10:26. We have concluded the executive session of the Planning and Public Policy Committee meeting and now return to open session. Today is Wednesday, September 28th, 2024. The time is 11:24 a.m. Are there any other items or any other business to come before this committee today? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned at 11:24 a.m. Thank you.